Well, welcome back. Happy Monday. We are back in the pastoral epistles, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus, called the pastoral epistles. 1 Timothy was a leadership manual describing how the church was to run. 2 Timothy is really what I call a combat manual. First two chapters lay out our foundations for Christian service, and we're in chapter 2 today. The last two chapters address challenges to Christian service, and sometimes the pastoral epistles are dismissed as books that are just for elders or just for teachers and pastors, and they do have, in fact, particular applicability to them, but they're really written to all of us, written to the whole church, so let's not lose sight of that. Particularly if you're in a church that is congregationally run. That is, major decisions such as for pastors and elders and things, budgets are put to the vote of the congregation. There's a real shared responsibility to make sure you get the right leadership and make the right decisions in the church. It's not something you could just blindly go along with the leaders as if you have no responsibility, but you need to be equipped as well as they do. So that's why 2 Timothy is important to you as well as to pastors and elders and teachers in the church. So we have four sections in 2 Timothy chapter 2. What Paul has done now, he's encouraged Timothy. Now he's going to remind him of his duties as he has as a leader of this church. And there's four of them. He's to pick, he's to prepare, he's to pilot, and then he is to persist. Pick, prepare, pilot, and persist is our four sections in 2 Timothy chapter 2. Let's start with pick. Verses 1 and 2 are very clear in 2 Timothy chapter 2. He says, "Then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will able to teach others also." So here we see this apostolic authority and teaching specifically, maybe not the authority, but the teaching being passed from Paul to Timothy. Timothy is to, in turn, pick men who are prepared for this duty. And in verses 3 through 7, he tells them how they are to be prepared. So first couple of verses, pick these men. Verses 3 through 7 is to prepare them. Specifically, Paul says to share in the suffering. I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again, that Christ's church in the world is built through suffering. You and I are the products of people who have made tremendous sacrifices in order to preserve our freedoms and liberty to know Christ and pursue him. But also many of us are in churches that have facilities, and people have made sacrifices to make those comfortable spaces available for us. Men have given themselves to years and years of training in some cases to teach us. They've submitted themselves to the authority of others to prepare for leading us. So all of us have a debt to pay to faithful men who are handing off the traditions of the faith. They are to share in the sufferings, as I said. Christ's church is built on his sufferings. So Paul uses three metaphors here: a soldier, an athlete, and a farmer. So from the soldier, we learn that he is to be a man focused on his commander, under the authority of another, ultimately of Christ, but also the elders of the church. They're to be under the authority of those elders. And these are men who are, like soldiers, able to submit themselves to authorities over them. The athlete, untiring and relentless in his effort to compete according to the rules. So similarly, these faithful men not only have to be men of humility, but also hardworking men who are relentless in the pursuit of their calling, relentless in the pursuit, ultimately of the prize, and that's what we learn from the farmer here. He's anticipating a future reward. Again, this idea of working diligently is in the front, but also the idea is added here with the farmer that he is laboring for crops that he will harvest later, that he is laboring for a future reward. So these men need to be prepared in this way to be humble, hardworking, and future-oriented. Paul then says, remember the gospel in verses 9 through 13. As you read this section, keep that in mind. Remember Jesus Christ risen from the dead, the offspring of Satan, as preached in my gospel. So he's reminding them of the fundamentals of the gospel. So important to stay rooted and stay grounded in the truth of the simple words of the gospel that have such profound impact. So Paul says, remember the gospel, and it's going to have some effects. It's going to cause him and you, faithful men, to endure everything. The purpose of remembering the gospel is so that the elect may be saved. Paul says, I endure everything for the sake of the elect, that they also may obtain the salvation that is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. People get confused about the elect. Some Calvinists would even say that if someone's been elect, they don't need to be evangelized. Paul wouldn't agree with that. Paul sacrificed and suffered for the sake of God's chosen ones, that they may be saved. So he knew that the means of salvation was through his preaching of the gospel. And God has identified not only who will be saved, but how will they be saved. And we each have a role to play. And then Paul talks about then this trustworthy saying. And in my Bible, maybe in yours as well, these verses, starting at the second part of verse 11 through verse 13, is kind of offset in the text a little bit. It may be indented. That's a signal from the editors that this is a bit of poetry. Several people think that Paul is actually repeating what was an ancient hymn in the church. So if it was an ancient hymn that he is repeating here, he's not only affirming it, but he's also giving witness to the fact that this has been in the church long enough for it to be common knowledge among the people. In fact, we see this frequently in the pastoral epistles, that Paul quotes something that's a well-known saying to affirm it, but also to signal to us that there's truth in the church that Paul is writing to. So these summary sayings, I'll just give you a list of them. They're in 1 Timothy 1:15, 1 Timothy 3:1, 1 Timothy 3:16, 4:1, and 4:8. 2 Timothy 2:11 through 13, and these here, and then we'll see it again in Titus chapter 1, verse 12, chapter 2, verses 11 through 14, chapter 3, verses 4 through 7. Why do I bring this up? Why do I point this out? These would be good passages for you to go back and go over and get those firmly in your mind. You might want to memorize them. You might want to paraphrase them. But these are important summary statements of the faith that Paul is affirming to his readers and acknowledging that these are succinct statements that are the core of our faith. Later theologians would come up with creeds, but these are right in the Bible. They are God's inerrant and inspired, infallible, all-sufficient word. So these would be worthwhile to go back and go over them again. Paul then is to not only pick and prepare, but he is to pilot them. That is, he is to guide them. And that's what these statements do, is it guides them back to the gospel, guides them back to the fundamentals of the faith, guides them back to pithy, well-known, memorable statements that ground us in the fundamentals, ground us in the roots of our faith. Then in verses 14 through 25, I think Paul continues with these instructions for what he calls faithful men from chapter 2, verse 1. It says, remind them of these things and charge them before God. Gives them several charges here. Note how often he talks about just silly arguments. He says, do not quarrel about words. Avoid irreverent babble in verse 16. Avoid ignorant controversy in verse 23. Seems to be, to me anyway, there's sometimes people in the church, or you often run to them online as well, but often people in the church that want to argue over the most, I'm going to say, mundane theological points. And that shouldn't be. That's really repulsive, and it damages those who would aspire to lead the church and teach the church. We can say this another way is pick your battles. Where are you going to fall on your sword? Where are you going to make draw a line in the sand and argue over? He says also to work hard in the word in verse 15. Flee from iniquity. That's adikia is the Greek word there, iniquity. This means wrongdoing. Just any kind of wrongdoing. Don't get caught up into it. Or injustice. He says alternatively, pursue faith, love, and peace. And be kind, able to teach, enduring evil, gently correcting. Again, very important qualities in a teacher, that you're not just jumping down someone's throat for every misspoken word, for every mistake that's made, but you're gently correcting. You're gently encouraging to move in the right direction. And then to see the purpose of that, Timothy, I think, is told to persist here. He says, correcting his opponents with gentleness, that God may perhaps grant them repentance, leading to a knowledge of the truth. Isn't that interesting? Is that gentleness leads to perhaps a knowledge of the truth. And after they come to their senses, they may escape from the snare of the devil of being captured by him to do his will. So leadership, men in leadership, teachers, whether you're a woman teaching women, a man teaching the other men or the church, serving in children's ministry, gentleness, patience, persistence is called for in the hope that God would use your godly demeanor as well as the truth to win someone back to him. So a few applications I'd suggest here for today, brothers and sisters. One is the need for faithful men willing to pursue this high calling. So many times in the church, it's the women who are leading. And sometimes I understand it's often of necessity because the men won't step up. So men, we need to take responsibility for the spiritual atmosphere in our home and in our churches. Again, I'll go back to particularly if you're in a congregational church, that is a church where decisions are submitted for voting. You need to be actively involved, not just going along with what your wife wants or your girlfriend or the ladies of the church, but you need to take a stand. You need to be a faithful man. You need to display and pursue this kind of character that Paul is talking about here. And don't feel a need to be right on every point all the time. Someone may, in fact, make a mistake. And that is due oftentimes to just immaturity and the need to study. You can come alongside a brother or sister and suggest that, hey, let's study that a little bit more closely. But you don't need to be right all the time. You don't need to be jumping down people's throats and pushing them away, but draw them in with your kindness and your winsomeness. And never lose hope. Never lose hope that those who are strayed from the faith will in fact return. Those who have strayed doctrinally and those who have strayed in behavioral sin as well. So God bless you, brothers and sisters. I hope you have a great Monday, and this is the start of a wonderful week in the Lord for you. God bless you.